So here's the scenario. You're an American, you're taking your boat to French Polynesia, and you want to be able to stay longer than the 90 days that you will be granted on entry. At least that's what you're granted on entry as of July 2025. But if you want to stay longer, you have to apply for a long stay visa and hopefully get it approved. So how do you go about that process? Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. I'm sharing information about applying for a long stay visa from Panama as an American citizen. This information is current as of early 2025, so if it's later, obviously keep checking to make sure that it's accurate at the time that you're applying. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Revolve Tech USA, the innovators behind the smartest tool on your boat. Smart boaters are switching to the Revolve 3-in-1 boating tool, a marine-tough, extendable, floatable system that replaces your boat hook, stiff brush, and soft brush in one compact design. Whether you're docking, scrubbing the deck, or cleaning your hull, the 3-in-1 boating tool gives you more utility, less gear, with zero compromises. Ditch the clutter. Upgrade your deck setup with gear that's built to do more. Visit boattoolpro.com and use coupon code BOAT10 to get 10% off your order today. Making sure you have all your gear in order is definitely an important part of going cruising, but so is that dreaded word, the paperwork, if you're leaving your country of origin. When we realized that we were heading for French Polynesia, we knew we wanted to spend longer than 90 days. And so that meant, I had to get a long stay visa. And a long stay visa, why? What matters? What's the big deal about a long stay visa? Because if you're used to cruising in places like the Bahamas or the Eastern Caribbean, the idea of getting a visa ahead of time is a little bit out of the ordinary as an American. But you might be used to getting a visa on entry to the country, and then if you want to stay longer, you just apply for an extension. No sweat, no hassle, maybe a little bit of money in the case of the Bahamas these days, but generally it's not any big deal. But in French Polynesia, if you don't have a long stay visa, you can't get an extension. There's no working around it. There's no applying last minute. There's no anything. So getting a long stay visa just gives you the opportunity. Not only does it give you a longer time in the country in the first place, but it also gives you the opportunity to extend your stay. If you don't have a long stay visa and you're not from an EU country, there's no extension. You have to leave the country by the end of that 90 days that you're given on entry. And French Polynesia is a big country. It extends and covers a great deal of geographical territory. If you're slowed down by weather or necessary repairs, that 90 days could disappear in a hurry. There is absolutely a great reason to just say I'm going to be there for 90 days, which still feels like a long time. And if you want to go through and make sure you're out of the hurricane zone, out of the cyclone zone, and you want to explore some areas between French Polynesia and New Zealand or the northern side of things, the Marshalls in that area, you may only want to take 90 days. So here's a little note on resources that I used as I was putting together the blog post that's linked in the show notes to this. There's Jacaranda's Journey with Chuck and Linda aboard, and they spent lots of time and work pulling together information on applying for the long stay visa from a number of different places. It's a great place to go for an overview of the process, but if you're interested at all in what the process has looked like over the years, it's a gold mine. If you're interested in just, hey, how has this whole thing evolved, it's a gold mine. And if you're applying to get a long stay visa from someplace other than Panama, that's probably where I would look. SV Sabato wrote an extremely detailed, extremely easy to follow blog post as Americans applying from Panama. They did that in 2024. And I followed this almost exactly to the letter, including their very, very helpful examples of the documentation that they provided, like the written documentation they provided. So those are two resources to check out also. But basically, the visa process is three parts. You make an appointment at the French Embassy in Panama City, you compile all the paperwork, and then you do your visits to the embassy. And again, this is just a reminder, this is applying from Panama. My understanding in applying from other places is that it can take a whole lot longer, and there are many more hoops to jump through. It's almost as if in Panama they've figured out how to deal with it on the French embassy side. The process takes a amount of money, 99 euros at least at the point of this writing, or US dollar equivalent, and it can take between 4 to 9 weeks depending on the time of year that you're applying. Another thing to keep in mind is that the wait time can vary significantly from what you're told. So friends of ours were told it would be 4 to 6 weeks, and theirs came in at about 7.5 weeks. And other people we know were told 4 to 6 weeks, and it came in 2. So it's best to go into this entire process with a very, very flexible, very open mind, and give yourself lots and lots of time. We also know people who applied thinking, oh, it's going to be a week to get it, and they were horrified to know that it was going to be 4 to 6 weeks, and they hadn't counted on that. So just understand that it can take a very, very long time. And as another background to it is that the visa application is approved twice. Once in Panama, and then all the paperwork is sent to Papeete in Tahiti for approval in Tahiti. So that's one of the reasons that it can take a long time. They do send the paperwork electronically, but it still takes a long time. There's much more detail in the blog post that's linked to this podcast. So step 1 is you make an appointment at the French embassy in Panama City. You do that online. You'll first need to determine if you need a visa, which is something that you do. You go through a questionnaire online to get there. And then the next step, after you fill out all the application, some of this information that you fill out, you will feel like you've already filled out. You still will have to fill it out again. Not a great big deal. Then, after you've finalized the appointment, and I would allow yourself a good half an hour to go through the booking an appointment. It's not as simple as, oh, I'm going to the website and I'm going to pick this. They actually ask you for all kinds of information because what they're trying to do is figure out what kind of an appointment you need. It's just a little complicated. So don't think you can sit down and get that appointment booked within a minute and a half, because it takes about a half an hour. You'll have to have things like your passport and information about generally where you are and where you're going in mind before you set that up. But again, all that is linked and detailed in the blog post that's linked on the show notes here. After you've booked the appointment, which can feel a little bit like a, whew, thank goodness, phew, I made it. I finally made it through and got the appointment. Step 2, now comes the paperwork. And you'll need all kinds of copies, like physical stack of copies of this stuff. So fire up your printer, scanner, copier. It did take me a couple of hours to pull all the paperwork together. But you're going to be needing things like a passport that's valid for at least 3 months. And yeah, you're going to be making copies of pages of that passport. You will also need a passport photo done to European standards, which are different than the U.S. standards. So make sure that wherever you're getting your passport photos done, understand the difference between the European and the American standards. You will also need payment in cash, in U.S. dollars or Balboas, when you go to the Panamanian embassy, the French embassy in Panama. You will need an application form that you printed out from the website. You'll need the registration receipt. You'll need your passport pages, a letter explaining that you promise not to work. You'll need proof of funds, so 3 months of recent bank statements showing that you have enough money to provide for your stay. You're including a letter as to what your boat accommodations are going to be. Again, details in that blog post. SV Sabado mentions taking their marriage certificate, although nowhere on the French paperwork do they ask for it. I don't think it can hurt. I took mine because I'm married to a French citizen, and so I wanted to just prove that. And you want proof of health insurance for the duration of your stay. And I used a Dan Boater, not the cheapest version, but the travel insurance that they have, and that was accepted without any question. You will be asked when you go to the embassy, this is a side note, if you want to keep your passport, which actually in Panama, you're required to have your passport with you. So they didn't make any fuss whatsoever about saying, yes, I want to keep my passport. I needed to sign a piece of paper with a reason for keeping it. Primary identification is one valid reason. Traveling is another. We know a number of people who start the process and then fly back to the States or somewhere else, and so they need their passport for traveling. But once you have your pile of paper in hand, then you go to step 3, which is 3 different embassy visits. Well, step 3 is really starts with one embassy visit. And in Panama, you better have your printed receipt showing your appointment time, because the guard is quite particular. They might have a handwritten Post-it note with names on it, looking for who's got appointments and people who are expected to go in. They want the name on your receipt to match the note that they have. The guard then radios inside to get the door unlocked. There's quite a bit of locking and unlocking of things. And people are watching from inside. So while you're waiting, don't forget to take your hat off. Don't put your feet or any other body part on any part of the building. You can't sit on the steps in the shade. And if you're anywhere near the building, they want your hat to be off and sunglasses off. So just be aware of that. And then you'll be buzzed in through a heavy door, go through a metal detector, hand over your passport for proof of identity, and then you're going to put any items other than the passport and a wallet and all of the paperwork that you have, you're going to put it into a provided locker that has a key. You have to put your phone or other device on silent, and you're supposed to put your phone into that locker as well. Then you'll be buzzed into a waiting room, be invited at the time for your appointment. You will hand over your paperwork and be invited back for a short interview, and that's where you will pay for your visa. That's it. Well, that's it for this step, and then you wait. One of the frustrations is that there's no way to track the progress of your visa application. You will either receive an email when your visa has been approved, or you won't, and I guess then you're stuck in limbo for a long time. I have no idea. I've not actually heard of anybody whose application, once it's been approved in Panama, I've not heard of anybody whose application has not been approved in Tahiti, but I'm sure it's happened. After you've received an email when your visa's been approved, you will need to drop off your passport at the embassy to have that visa, which is a 1-page thing, inserted into your passport. And that initial drop-off doesn't require an appointment, but you don't get to go through the metal detecting bars again. You'll just be buzzed in and go through the first heavy door, and you'll slide your passport in at a spot to the left. And then once the visa has been put into your passport, you will receive another email telling you to make an appointment to come pick it up. And luckily that email has a link in there to go directly to the appointment processing page. So then you go back and you pick up your passport and you're ready to roll. And then you have a lovely, lovely long time to explore these gorgeous islands in French Polynesia. So getting a long stay visa for French Polynesia from Panama, as an American from Panama, takes 3 steps, kind of, ish. The first step is to make an appointment. The second step is to compile all your paperwork, and then you have your embassy visits that you're in. But I can't wait to share an anchorage with you, maybe somewhere in these amazing islands where we happen to be right now, and we can toast to our incredible good fortune at being done with that paperwork and being able to live this amazing lifestyle. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. I hope you learned something, and maybe it's helped you if you're applying for a long stay visa as an American from Panama. The Boat Galley is all about making boat life better. And maybe some of that is inspiration for places that you might want to go. Maybe some of that is just details about the spots where you happen to be or life on a boat in general. And some of it just is just some tips and ideas. I hope you have the most spectacular week.